Hi everyone, it's Mari. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna do some sort of ink exploration of the Sailor Yurameku Kyokkou ink in my ink journal. I'm gonna be using, of course, the ink, my ink journal, and some other tools here like a homemade dip pen that I did. So if you're interested in watching this, just keep on watching. Okay, so let's get started. You probably noticed by now that this is going to be a little bit of a different video. First, I'm doing a voiceover, which I haven't done in a long time. So apologies if there are any audio issues. I was watching something on my computer while recording it because it's a kind of lengthier process. So I figured, I can just do a voiceover later. And then the other different thing about this video is that I'm using a different filming setup because I just changed. I used to film it from my cell phone, and now I'm using a webcam. I just wanted to change things a little bit, and with this view is a little bit of a distorted view, like a fish eye lens. So I hope that doesn't bother you too much. But you also get another view of my very messy desk. So yeah, there's that. It's a very messy desk, but it is what it is. But going back to the ink journal, I've been really enjoying doing these ink explorations in my ink journal. So I'm using a a passport size insert here. And this is actually made of Cosmo Airlight paper. I got this notebook from Paper Penguin Co. And I've been really enjoying. This is my first time trying the Cosmo Airlight paper, and it's a really pretty paper. The only thing I would say is that the hand oils the oils from your hand, they get transferred really easily to the paper. So sometimes it might seem that the ink is skipping a little bit, but it's in fact just the oils from your hands that show up better in this paper than in other papers like Tomo River paper, for example. But I've been enjoying this quite a bit. I'm also doing chromatography strip here for that ink. So what I'm doing is I bought a bunch of this chromatography paper, then I just do a line in the bottom and I dip the very end of the paper into water and I let it sit in the water for about 1 minute just to have the water spread a little bit. And with that, we can see all of the different color components that are present in this ink. Um, so right off the bat, we can see that there's a lot of pinks and blues in this ink. I'm just gonna set this aside so I can work on other things. And then for the ink exploration on my ink journal, the first thing I do is to date, and I just put the month and year. I don't think that's super important, but I was looking through videos of other people's ink journals, and one of them was from Chris Science, and she was flipping through a very old ink journal that she had, and she said, "Oh, I can't remember when I did that. I wish I would have written the date." So I'm trying to write the date just in case, if I look back later, if I, have the same sentiment as her, at least I'm trying to to write the date whenever I can remember. But I do pretty much the same setup for every ink that I test, which is just write the name of the brand and the series of the ink, and then on the other line I just write the ink name. I do some sort of like bubbles on the side just so I can see a little bit more of the coloring and the shading for that ink. And then I have a homemade dip pen that I did, which is with a Wingsung. I think it's 3009, the model. I bought it on Amazon really cheap. It was like 4 pens for $15. I didn't really enjoy the pen as much, but I noticed that the nibs are exactly the same as, the same format as the Lamy nibs. And what I really like the Lamy nibs is that they are really easy to change, right? To change the nib. So I thought, thinking about the Sailor Kokoro dip pen, I think, and the Pilot. I think there's a Pilot dip pen as well, right? But thinking about those pens, those newer dip pens that were coming out that were using pretty much like a standard fountain pen nib, I thought that might be a good pen to try to convert into a dip pen. So what I did was I could just, just change the nibs and dip it into the ink and that's it. But what I was trying to avoid is having to clean the feed because once ink gets into the feed, then I would have a lot of trouble cleaning the feed. Well, not a lot of trouble, but trouble enough that would discourage me from using it. So what I did was I asked my husband's help to uh, help me convert this into a dip pen. So we took some epoxy. I don't know if it's glue, I don't know what it's called, but we took some epoxy, clear epoxy, and just covered the feed and where, the we pretty much covered the entire feed and the junction between the where the nib would go and the feed, so that no ink would go into the feed. So with that, all of the ink that pulls up there is within that between the nib and the place where the nib is housed. So it's very easy for me to clean. I can just dip this in water and it will be really cleaned. And again, because it's a Lamy nib, I can just, change it very easily. So with that, I'm testing my inks with a fine nib, which is actually not a Lamy nib. This is the nib that came with this Wingsung pen. And then I also tested with medium and broad Lamy nibs. So I brought these two nibs separately just to use as my dip pen to test my inks. And this way I can see how this ink performs with different nib sizes, which I think it could be very important, particularly for lighter inks, right? I like to write with fine nibs more often. So it's very cool to see how the ink will perform in a finer nib before really needing to ink a pen entirely and then realizing it's maybe too light for a fine nib. So I've been enjoying that quite a lot. Again, I said this before, but I got the layout idea for this ink journal or ink exploration from Simone, one of her videos. She was testing her inks in a very similar fashion. So I thought, that's great. That's exactly what I need. So that's what I've been doing. And then I'm just basically transcribing one of my epidemiology books here, just so I can have something to write about while testing these inks. And regarding the Sailor Yurameku Kyokkou ink particularly, this is one of those dual shading or chromo shading inks that I've been enjoying quite a lot lately. And I had the Manyo Haha. I do have it still actually. And I really like that ink. It's more of like a blue tone ink. So I was looking into other chroma shading inks, and there were quite a lot of blues. And I was trying to avoid that a little bit. So this Sailor Yurameku Kyokkou, at least on the Clairefontaine paper, it's looking quite like a dusty purple, more muted purple, which was exactly what I wanted, right? I don't think it shows up really well in the video. Kind of looks more blue in the video, but in person it looks more like a purple. At least in the Clairefontaine paper again, because I've heard from the Goulet pencast video that this Yurameku inks will actually look quite differently depending on the paper that you use. So at least in the Clairefontaine, it's pretty much purple from what I'm seeing. Uh, and then other than that, I like to do as well like a ink resistance test of sorts. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing that. It's interesting, but what I'm thinking is maybe the Clairefontaine paper kind of absorbs the ink more quickly. So it kind of I didn't have any ink so far that I couldn't really see the line that I drew before putting on the water. So I'm thinking maybe it's something particularly regarding the Clairefontaine paper. I haven't done this test in other papers yet, but that could be an interesting test to do as well. Um, and then I've just done like a bigger ink swatch with a paintbrush just to again see more of those the shading and all of those colors or multicolor, dual colors, whatever that are involved in this ink. I always like to write the source of the ink sample that I got. So in this case, the source would be Yoseka, as you can see from the small bottle there. Um, and then I have some space for notes. Uh, it's usually just a first impression notes, just because that's pretty much the first thing I do whenever I get a new ink. I usually just want to play with ink a little bit, so I just do my ink exploration, and I don't really do like a longer writing performance evaluation to see if I'm really gonna enjoy this ink or not. So it's just pretty much a first impression notes. Um, so for this ink in particularly, I really liked it. I thought it was really interesting. I think this is an ink that I might eventually think about getting a bottle because I'm very particular with purples, and this is one that I really liked. I'm gonna show the chromatography later, but from what I can see from my ink journal here that I have in front of me while I'm recording the voiceover, there's just a hint of yellow where I laid my ink in the bottom, and then we have a huge blob of pink and another one of blue. So it's a really interesting ink. From the chromatography, I would maybe think it could be more of a blue ink. And actually, from the video, it actually looks more blue than purple. But in reality, for me, it's looking more purple. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this ink. I look forward to putting it in a pen. Um, yeah, you're pretty much just gonna see me struggle with like a little bit now. She always comes up when I'm working with ink and she wants to drink the water that I have here. So I'm just gonna try to avoid that because, you know, the water has been contaminated with ink already, so I don't want her to drink that, but she wants what she wants. So I'm just gonna do what I can to try to end the video or show you guys what it's left in the ink journal while I try to avoid her drinking the water. So thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one and let me know if you tested this ink already. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye bye.